today we'll talk about the game Titan Strike from SPI from 1979. It's what's called a capsule game. So the map, the rules, the counters all come contained. Here's a sense of scale for you. So first of all, this is the cover art, and generally in these capsule games from SPI, the cover then folds out to be the map. The art is nice. I think it's well done. So that's the cover, and then the back also, it's consistent, the art, and so it gives you a bit of the theme. So the Martian Rebellion of 2093 had frayed the economic fabric of the entire solar system, as USA and USSR gambled on the development of interstellar colonization. The European Economic Community and the hegemony of Eastern Asia surveyed the outer system. Most important among the new colonies was Titan, the largest moon of Saturn, beneath whose barren surface lay the salvation of civilization, fissionable materials sufficient to feed Earth's hungry reactors. By 2117, 12 years after the first fissionable site, economic and territorial disputes precipitated war. Titan Strike simulates the struggle between the EEC and the HEA in deep space and on Titan itself. The other components are the rules. So, similar to many of their other capsule games, it's 4 pages of rules. It's got some useful diagrams, charts, and tables, and 2 sets of them, which is because it is a 2-player game, and it can easily, as they say in the rules, be played solo. It comes with a card with to punch out of 100 counters. In the counters you'll have, this is a ranged combat strength. This is the type of unit. This is the range, the close combat strength, and this is the movement allowance. So that's the general information. The EEC and the HEA. A lot of the components are similar between the two. There's a little bit difference in counts of and some of the strengths of, but they're very similar. So this is a heavy infantry unit. This is engineering infantry. This is a hopper. They basically can jump. There's a TECV. It's kind of a drone kind of tank. This is a tank. These are drones. These are hovercrafts. These are lasers. These are different air-based units. And then the other players, so these are, like I said, there's some similarities. Hovercraft, hoppers, heavy infantry, engineers, heavy infantry, TCVs, some different, air-based units, howitzers. And again, you see there's a little bit of difference between the two. Lasers, and some more flight aircraft. Go out to the map here. So it's okay cardstock. So no complaints. This is the map. Personally, I like it. It's professionally done, and it defines the different. It's interesting how it's depicting Titan. It's changed a little bit from our recent understanding of Titan. It having a lot of hydrocarbons on it. So there's a ammonia sea. There's a mesa, and different kind of puddles of ammonia. And this is a dry sea, and it's hex based. And so the distance across each hex is basically a kilometer. So that's the components. So setting up for play here. So the game gives you 3 scenarios of different levels of complexity. One is a skirmish, which is only land-based units. It's kind of an introductory one. There's no flight units, and there's no electronic warfare, so it's good startup, but I won't be doing that because I want to show more of the aspects of the game. There's Striking Titan Prime, which has all the aspects of the game. Has a lot of units, including flight units, and does the electronic warfare. So I'll be doing that one. Media engagement is also a big scenario with a lot of all the options as far as components, but there's more randomization as far as when the units enter. You roll dice to determine what turn that components come in. So I'll be doing the strike in Titan Prime. Titan Prime was the HEA's most important base. Its headquarters controlled all operations on Titan. Its skimmer strip based most of the cargo skimmers on the moon, and emergency supplies and equipment were stockpiled under D Prime's Mesa. When an EEC force fought its way into striking range of the base, the HEA garrison counterattacked ferociously. So here's setup. HEAs are the green, EECs are orange. So the components for the HEA, and again, it serializes you to put them anywhere on the board, and you can see the kind of the base components in the headquarters, power station, etc. And these are basically tunnels that go under the Mesa, which is interesting. So as far as what the HEA has, they have 3 TCVs, 2 Hoover platforms, 1 howitzer, 2 lasers, and I put these artillery kind of units up in the Mesa, thinking that maybe the height advantage of the height of the Mesa might give it some advantage. 2 heavy infantry units, and then also it says you can use all 6 skimmers, so I have 2 skimmers for them and the skimmer strip. So for the EEC then, they have more counters coming in, which is interesting. So they have 6 TCVs, 2 hoppers, 3 drones, 2 lasers, 2 Hoover platforms, and 2 engineers. So that's set up. We'll get to play here. So in play here, I'm a few turns in, and I'll show you where I'm at here. So I basically had, the HEA were set up in kind of their initial position. The EEC were coming in the side. So my approach was to basically come in as fast as I could with the EEC and kind of overload the edges of the HEA, and I think that's been successful. So the EEC has kind of overloaded down here, so I got TCVs coming in here, I have hoppers coming down kind of in this flank. So I got Hoovers and engineers and drones and lasers coming up on the top here, and there was some combat and lasers, were lost, and some attacking units were lost as well, and some TCVs were lost down here, but it overloaded, so it's coming in. And then the HEA has been kind of retreating their position to kind of consolidate here, and so TCs are here, howitzers are here, and so what you see here is that so one option is you can attack the dam of the Great Ammonia Sea, and when you do that, then it'll flood the dry lake bed. And I wasn't sure what these green plane markers were for, but I found, I don't know if it's intended or not, but it's useful to mark the distance that the Great Ammonia Sea has gone. So it's shown here. So basically it's flooded. Each turn the dam is broken, it floods basically 6 hexes. So this is the extent that it's flooded. So to do that, I used basically Hoovers to do that. And normally in combat, on land combat, each time you have a successful attack, you disrupt the unit and you rotate it 180 degrees, and then if it's disrupted again, it's eliminated from the board. And it turns out for the dam, it takes 3 disruptions to cause it to happen. So there are 3 disruptions there from the Hoover, and also a TCV attacked. And actually the TCV was destroyed after the dam burst, because it's destroyed when the Ammonia Sea floods, but the Hoover was okay. So that's what's going on here. So it's not looking good for the HEA, and they're kind of defensively, flooding to basically to block some paths, although Hoovers can come across. They're trying to block stuff coming in by flooding the sea. So that's the setup. So then I'll walk you through how a typical sequence works. So the items in the sequence are the electronic warfare phase, the sky combat phase, where basically fighters fight fighters. The skydive phase, where the fighters can progress on the map and then land to get base, or not land, but they basically show themselves on the board so that they're closer to their target, but then they're also susceptible to get hit by anti-aircraft fire. And then there's the anti-sky phase, where land units that have the capability can attack the exposed fighters that have come within range of the board. And then there's ranged, where sky units can fire to land units, and some, and then land units with range capability fire to other items in their range. They've already done their fighting anti-sky. Now they're fighting against land units. And then there's land movement, where you move the units on the land, and you do close combat, where items within 1 hex of each other can attack. And then this is the attack tables. So the first step is electronic warfare, and I found it says you should use a sketchpad for that, but I found actually if you creatively use it gives you 2 sets of 6 counters that you can use to randomize if you want to use a dice. But actually I use a dice, and just as a side note, this is online sometimes you can find these SPI kind of small dice that are used in their games, and I was able to get that. So these capsule games don't have dice, but it's kind of nice to have a kind of SPI. I wanted to go with it there, so I used that for the dice. But so if you use these, so for the electronic warfare, you're basically trying to jam signals, and the EEC has 3 points, and the HEA has 5 to play with. So what I've shown here, so since I'm doing the HEA, I'm randomizing, and it works well for solo, because really the only thing you have to do for solo play is to randomize this electronic warfare. Everything else you just kind of change your frame of reference. So I find it works really well for solo play, and it's highly recommended for that. So it's either 2-player or 1. So first I did the HEA. So I said that, okay, let's try to jam frequency 1 with 2 electronic warfare points, and then frequency 4 with 3, so I have a total of 5. And then so I randomized, I basically rolled a dice and found that for the EEC, they're trying to jam frequency 2, and they have 3 points. They're going to play all those to 2. So since none of these frequency coincide with each other, the net effect is there's not jamming. But that's how that works. And then, so Sky Combat, at this point, all the Sky units have been eliminated, but they're basically skimmers. So this is what, the skimmers would look like. And so they came in quickly, they combated each other, and if they get 1 hit, they're destroyed. So they can have a big effect, but they're destroyed, if they're hit once instead of 2 for land units. So the EEC ones came in, they had 4. The HEA, started at their base and they only had 2, but they were able to. So basically, the EEC destroyed the HEA, skimmers, since they were kind of outnumbered, but then the lasers of the HEA were able to destroy the remaining skimmers or fighters. Combat is simultaneous, so the EEC skimmers were also attacking lasers and destroyed lasers. So some lasers got off the board, and then all the skimmers have been off the board. So you have the electronic warfare, the Sky Combat, which there's no more Sky units for that. But how the Sky Combat did work is you look at your Sky Combat strength of your attacking opposing units, and then based on that you get a combat differential, and then from the combat differential, and including electronic warfare, then you determine if there's damage, and damage is all done by doing a 6-sided dice, and then the lock-in chart tells you how many rolls you get. So the better the differential, the many rolls you get. But basically, when you roll under your attack strength, that means you're successful and you've disrupted or destroyed a unit. So that's how that works. So then there's electronic warfare, sky combat, which I talked about, skydive, which basically says a fighter is moving closer to its target, so it has to show on the board, is my interpretation. But then when it gets closer to its target, it is also susceptible to anti-sky. So items that have land units that have basically an alphabetic character here have anti-escape capability, and whatever that letter is defines how successful it can be. And then you go to this table where you have your anti-sky rating, like for instance of a laser, it's A, and then the fighter, the skimmer, has a maneuver rating which is C. So you compare the A to the C, and again including electronic warfare adjustment effects from here, and then you basically roll the dice. In this case you roll two 6-sided, and from that result then you see if basically you've destroyed the fighter. So that's how anti-sky works. And then ranged is a little more straightforward. You basically, whether they're fighter units, they have a range rating, or land units have a range. Like for instance lasers, they have 20, Hoovers only have 1. So that's how far they can fire. And then so the way you resolve combat is you see if it's in range, and then again you apply your electronic warfare adjustment factors here, and then you also look at terrain effects. So these are you see the combat modifiers here. You apply that, and then you roll a dice, and if your attack strength, your range attack strength, if the dice roll is less than or equal to your range attack strength plus modifiers, and your range combat strength is shown here, then you've disrupted the unit. And if a unit's disrupted, then the defensive unit, you rotate it, like I said, 180 degrees. If it's disrupted again, it's removed from the board. So it's kind of nice that that way you can track, you can get some units, you get one damage, it's gone, the skimmer units, fighter units, and land units are too, so that's how you can track attack. And then land movement, so how far you can move on land then is, you have a movement allowance, so for Hoover it's 6, so that's your movement points. How many movement points it costs to move in the different areas is dictated on this terrain effects chart. So it's for a TCV, for instance, takes 1 point. So if you have a 4K build, you can move 4. Ammonia is 4, so that's how many points it takes. Some are prohibited. For instance, infantry can't move into ammonia. So that's how movement works. And then you do close combat. So it's the same approach as ranged combat, except you have your close combat strength here instead of your ranged combat. So you basically do your modifiers of electronic warfare and terrain effects. To this, you roll a dice. Say if your modifiers are 0, you'd roll dice, and if it's 4 or less, you're successful. So in this case, it would be. So those are all the steps. And in each combat, so you roll for initiative, and then you basically alternate between EEC and HEA, individually. So you basically alternate between individual units, and combat simultaneous, so you capture it as you don't take damage until you've fired your unit, basically. So So that's how that works. So overall, for a smaller game, I'm very impressed and would highly recommend it. Given the nature of it, it's got, it doesn't have a lot of counters. It's got less than 100, marked counters, and then others of the 100 are for, can be used for marking the sea. But there's some differences between the different sides, which is kind of nice. They're not like completely identical. There are some similarities. The combat is straightforward, but it allows you to capture modifiers. And I mean, I don't like when you have to use sketch paper, but I think if you do this kind of approach with the available, kind of randomizer kits, I think you can avoid doing sketch paper, which is great. So everything is here then. So that's good. It's true, I mean, a lot of games are like space opera or, science fantasy. It's pretty much true science fiction because it's got a premise of a, world and what the world is like, and there's a reason why the components are the way they are. So there's some thought into that. It's got a few scenarios, and there's variations in their scenarios. There's some randomization. So there's a lot of replayability there. I mean, it's hard to find a downside with it. I like also that you can do tunnels. There's some, some interesting, you can think in terms of, how the bases are set up. There's, you got the ammonia sea that you can deal with, different terrain effects. I mean, obviously, for all these small games, the downside is the limitation of the number of components, but that's just the nature of a smaller game. But there's enough here to have a lot of replayability, I think, and a lot of variation in kind of tactics. And actually, personally, I really like the graphics. I know probably some people think it's a little too colorful, but I really like it. It really kind of gets you in the sense of a theme, in my opinion. And, Titan does exist, and what we've learned about is a little bit different than what we've shown here, but, like I said, it's science fiction, so I'm a big fan. I'll definitely do it again. I'd say it's one of my favorite smaller games, so I'll give it a 7.